And you were DJing with a whole like smattering of rappers at the time, right? Like Spectrum City was it was like a rotating group of people that would come in and you DJ with, right?
Exactly. It was like a collective, if you want to call it that.
And
I kind of like, it's funny. We're mostly DJs or record selectors, if you want to call it.
mhm.
But, by being there, we kind of like brought on other rappers, and things of that neighborhood that was from the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Chuck was one of them. Of course, when I met Chuck was through that as well. And so the whole Public Enemy was based and created from the Spectrum City DJ outfit, so to speak.
And how did it get narrowed down specifically? Because you put out the track "Lies" in '84, and how did it get out of all those people? How did it get narrowed down to Chuck D and Butch Cassidy for that track?
Well, Chuck and Butch was the two primary MCs that was on the radio station that we was doing, which was WBAU out in Long Island. It was out at Adelphi University. So I guess at the time we didn't have any like name for the group or anything. So we just said, we wanted to put out a record because we saw a lot of artists that was putting out records like Grandmaster Flash and Treacherous 3 and the Disco 4. I mean Grandmaster DXT, Fab Five Freddy. I can go on for days. And these were all the tradition of the Cold Crush Brothers. These were all artists that was making records independently. And so, quite naturally, as playing a lot of those records and breaking a lot of those records in Long Island, we wanted to kind of like see if we can try our hand at making a record ourselves.
And then you came out.
We first got signed to a independent label called Vanguard Records, and a well-known DJ by the name of Pinky Velasquez produced the first record, and he produced it as almost like an electro record. If you're very familiar with the Egypt record, that was damn, I'm forgetting names. Egyptian Lover put out.
I'm vaguely familiar, but not too over.
I know, but if you when rap started, it was more electro based than it was the slower, funkier hip hop records. And so a lot of the groups were putting out records in that, and that was coincided with the freestyle movement. And so if you're familiar with, if you go back and do research on the freestyle movement was basically, it took off from the Planet Rock record, and that particular record was basically inspired by Kraftwerk's Trans Europe Express. And lo and behold, people didn't know that was a big B-boy record. We called it B-boy back in the days, and that was a classic for a lot of the rappers that wanted to kind of like rhyme and stuff. And so those records, so the producer that we was with, he was from that genre, that era, and so he produced the record.
You weren't producing at the time. You were just DJing.
No, I didn't produce the record. And that's what led me to realize that I didn't like the production, because he spent a lot of time making that record. And then when the final results came out, I wasn't happy with it, because I thought that record represented to me what was something that was happening a while back that I thought was now starting to run its course. So I wanted to do something a little bit more street heavy. So with a little bit of time, I got a chance to produce the B-side of that record.
Was that Check Out the Radio?
Get any attention. Check Out the Radio, correct?
Gotcha.
And so from that point, it just got me to understanding like the production process, and the reason why I got into it is because I never wanted to be a producer. That wasn't a thing that I didn't like. I didn't go out to set out to be a producer, but I just saw that when I was in the studio, there was a bunch of things that I would have done differently that I saw that was being handled. And so then I decided, I said, you know what? Why don't I just step in and do the production, because I couldn't afford to produce to get real, quote unquote, real producers to produce the record. And so I took a demo. Me and Chuck took a demo to Russell Simmons, and we wanted him to produce the record with that, and because he was producing the Curtis Blow records, he was producing the Run DMC records, and he suggested that we go to his new partner at the time, Rick Rubin. Mm-hmm. And Rick at the time, you know, when I listened to the record that Rick did, which was gosh, I can't think of the title of the record. It's Yours by Tila Rock. Mm-hmm. All right. So if you go up and check out that record, you will see it. Tila Rock record. It's called It's Yours. Produced by Rick Rubin. Now that record was very similar to the demos we were making on WBAU when we put out records. So we didn't have, you know, there wasn't a lot of rap records at the time to fill up a whole show. So what we would do is I would go in and bring in local guys from the neighborhood that would just rap on the beats. And I would have a drum machine. We started out, me and my brother Keith, we started out on using the Roland CR 8000. Mm-hmm. And you could probably, you could see it on eBay now. It goes for about, I think it goes for about, a couple of grand, $1,500 to $2,000 now. But that particular drum machine had a preset amounts of beats. It had a lot of presets on it. And it also had an area where you can program your own beats, but you had to program it in step fashion. So in other words, you couldn't hear what it was that you was programming. You just would press buttons and then hope to get something that was kind of remotely usable. Mm-hmm. But and so we would play the beat and then have the rappers rap, and then when the choruses come in, we would scratch something from a record, and basically we'll look for a horn hit or a brass sound, something that will give it that extra high frequency area that we was looking for, and we were scratching in the choruses. And we made a lot of demos like that. And when Russell told me and Chuck that, he wanted Rick Rubin to produce the record, and I went in and saw what he was doing, I said, wait a minute, I could do that. We're doing that kind of stuff already. And so that's when when Rick decided that he wanted to, we produced this demo called Public Enemy Number One. Mm-hmm. And that particular demo was the most requested record on the radio station. So for me, using the radio station was kind of like a form of testing out what the public would want to hear before you get a chance to put it out. And so that showed me that there's always something that you can do when you're trying to figure out like what you want to do with what you want to put out, or whether or not you have a track and you have a record and you have something in mind and you don't know how the public is going to accept it. It's always good to test it in a club environment, or test it in some way, or a radio station, somewhere where you can broadcast to a group of people so that you can get feedback. Mm-hmm. And so we got feedback from that record, and that record was huge in terms of the feedback that we got. It caught the attention of Rick anyway, and Rick decided that he wanted to sign, Chuck to a 12-inch deal.
So this must have been right after Rick started Def Jam, right? Exactly.
Matter of fact, he was still in the dorms at NYU.
Right down the street from New School.
Exactly.
And are you, because back on the check out the radio record, you and Keith are both listed by your birth name. And I wanted to ask, because if you go, I don't have an actual physical copy.
Right.
But I want to ask, when did it become going as publicly as Shocklee, and which one of you initiated that?
Well, it's funny because it came from a thing where me and Chuck would always say that, you know, that I'm the president because I was the leader of everything. All right. And so Shocklee just came from something that we thought would sound kind of good on the radio. Because I didn't like my government name being put out there. So I since I've always went with Hank as my first name, which is actually my middle name, which is actually a nickname from my middle name, I decided to use the Shocklee as a moniker, so to speak. Just something that had a little bit more flair, and it sounded kind of interesting across on the radio when you say it.
And Keith was just down to do it himself too.
And Keith was my brother. So
yeah,
there
so you kind of pushed him into it, but he was fine with it.
Exactly.
And so the first Public Enemy #1, the demo comes out. Then after that, how long after that is it that Rick Rubin wants to sign you? Like days, weeks, months?
Well, you know, something is hard to tell because we was going back and forth. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that we didn't want to do was we never wanted to sign to a major record company or any kind of record company. Because I worked with, I was already at the time throwing events. I was a promoter. So as I was throwing events, I was already hiring artists to come play for my events. And I heard all the horror stories about their record companies and all the stuff that was going on. And I said, well, why would we want to sign to these record companies when I'm pretty much a promoter and I'm nobody and I'm bringing in big name artists. You know, we brought in the Fat Boys, we brought in the Treacherous 3, the Fearless 4, all of these guys that we brought in, Grandmaster, Flash, we brought in MC Shan, we did Stetsasonic. I mean, we would bring all of these artists and basically, you know, we're paying them to play for us. Mm-hmm. And so what I was saying, I was saying like, well, why would we want to record for labels? So it took like a year and a half, you know, before we decided to go ahead when one of our friend at the time, which was Bill Stephanie, who the one that gave us that started us on the radio show at WBAU, it became the promotion director for Def Jam Records.
And how do they convince you so early on though? Because it's not like they're just starting. How do they show you that they're going to make their worth, you know, make it worth it for you?
Well, that was the whole key, because it was Bill Stephanie, the one that convinced us, because when he started working for them, that he convinced me that Def Jam was legit. In other words, like they were the most fairest company that you can work with. And at the time, they had just released the LL Cool J album that did well through Columbia Records. That was a subsidiary of Sony. And so that album did very well for LL. And so we decided that, okay, well, we'll try this. And they only signed us for a 12-inch record.
And was that Yo Bum Rush?
That was Public Enemy #1.
Oh, that was Public Enemy 1. Okay, gotcha.
Correct. Yeah, so that was the deal that we had. But because of the fact that, you know, I've already had my own studio and everything, is that we produced seven tracks off of the contract that they gave us for one record. Mm. So once we delivered 7 tracks, they were like, well, why don't we just roll this into an album? And so that's thus when the concept of Public Enemy became. Is because it was always modeled after, it was more modeled after rock and roll than it was R&B.